Welcome to M&A Mondays, the UK's first YouTube series dedicated to all things M&A. From interviews with the leading figures in the industry, to coffee chats with analysts, diversity panels, all the way through to workshops, we'll be covering it all. We do hope you enjoyed the video, and please give us a like and a follow on our social media. Thank you very much. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode and the finale of M&A Mondays, the UK's first YouTube series dedicated to all things M&A. My name is Patrick Gorton and I'm the founder and co-head of the group, and alongside me is Manasvi, who is our head of FIG.
Today we're absolutely delighted and honoured to be joined by Ravi Gupta. Ravi graduated from the University of Leeds with a BSc in Mathematics and Management prior to joining PwC in 1993, where he qualified as a chartered accountant. Ravi then went on to join Rothschild Co in October 1997, where he's been for the past 23 years and had a highly successful career.
Ravi is currently the co-head of UK and the global head of industrials and global advisory at Rothschild Co. We are incredibly honoured to have him here with us today, and it is particularly special as it is our season finale. So without further ado, let's begin. Hi Ravi, how are you?
Very well, Patrick. Nice to meet you and Mansfi. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Well, thank you again for joining us. I guess the first question from me would be, having started your career at PwC in accountancy, what was your experience like in accountancy and what led you to ultimately switching to a career in banking?
I mean, that's a good question. Maybe I just rewind a little bit just to put that in context. So I suppose from a young age, I had two passions really in life. One was music. I loved playing music. And secondly, I developed a keen interest in problem solving, which sounds a bit vague, I know, but I just liked stuff that was complicated and that was challenging. Now, I kind of realized that, and I'm still training to be a classical musician, but I kind of realized actually that I was never going to be good enough to make it as a professional musician, which is a shame. But I was quite realistic about that, but I still love playing today. So then I always think in life you should do what you enjoy, and I enjoyed problem solving. With that is a natural affinity to mathematics. So I developed, if you like, a liking of maths, and I was always told by my teachers that you should really study what you enjoy at university, so I continued with maths. With maths then developed, if you like, an interest in finance, in business, and therefore I thought, well, if I want to therefore accept the fact I'm not going to be a musician in life, then I should think about a career in finance. I've always felt that, and if you look around many successful business leaders, a lot of them have been trained in accounting. They've trained as an ACA. So I felt that the ACA training would offer key skills, financial literacy. And so I was attracted to the training. And I'll be honest, I didn't enter into accounting thinking it was going to be a long-term career for me, but I thought it was going to be a good tool to open many other doors in finance. And I had no idea at this stage that investment banking was where I wanted to settle my career, but so I just wanted to keep all the options open. And when I was at PwC, it was PW back then, in my third year, I was seconded, and was very fortunate, seconded to what was called the TSG group, which is transaction services. And this was in the early years of PwC thinking about this sort of, if you like, service to provide clients. So what that effectively does is provide due diligence support to banks and clients when they're thinking about deal making. And then I suddenly got exposure to deal making, M&A deal making that is, and found it actually very interesting and fascinating. And with that, I developed an interest in wanting to go into a career in investment banking, but particularly in M&A advisory. So that's really how it developed. And so after I'd completed 4 years at PwC, I obviously then wanted to move, and I met Rothschild, and I'm here still today. And I still, looking back, I still think the accounting training, there are many routes into investment banking, but the accounting training, for me, I would still recommend it, because what does it do? It teaches you the ability to read with confidence financial statements. It absolutely helps you understand and create models that you need when you do M&A advisory, but also it teaches you good project management skills. It is scary how even in your second year as an audit practitioner, and you're still training, actually you're running projects, you're running assignments, you're running audit. That's a valuable key skill. And fourthly, you're with client, you are in a client facing environment. So you've got to develop those client facing skills. So even today, I would say to people that if you're thinking of a career in investment banking, don't dismiss the accounting route, because I think that's a valuable one. So that sort of summarizes how I got to.
Thank you very much.
So moving on to your time at Rothschild, it's quite common for people to move between banks within their career, but you've spent almost 25 years at Rothschild Co. Is there anything that you think has kept you at the firm? And do you think Rothschild offers a unique experience for its bankers?
So obviously something in the water that's kept me. Either that or no one else wants me. So no, seriously. So when I joined Rothschild, it's called Rothschild, they know Rothschild Co, back in 1997. I didn't have, I'm not going to sit and pretend I thought I was going to be here for such a long time. I had no set career plan. My objective in joining Rothschild was exposure in transaction services group at PwC, as I mentioned, in transactions. I just wanted to do transactions. They just looked fun. They looked interesting. They looked complicated. And it looked like problem solving would be, absolutely front and center of deal making. So when I joined, it was horrendous. I tell you, I had no idea what I was doing. I was clueless. People were using all these expressions like EBITDA ratios, and I had no idea what these things were. So I kid you not, the first 12 months was really, really challenging. And I did feel like giving up during that period, thinking, hold on a minute, I've just left a very good career to come here. I don't know what I'm doing. But I stuck it out, obviously. And then what was quite interesting is I had a huge amount of exposure to transactions. So I remember doing my first transaction, which was for a very large corporate PLC, and they'd received a takeover approach. I probably shouldn't talk about names yet. And then I was the junior member of the team at Rothschild, advising, if you like, the target company on whether they should accept or recommend this offer. And I just loved that. It was like a 6-month assignment. It was all hush hush, obviously, because it's all very sensitive. And then it was announced, it was on the front page of the FT, and I got a real adrenaline kick out of that. And I learned a hell of a lot during that 6 months, doing that transaction. And then slowly after that, I did more and more deals, and each one was different. It was interesting, it was fascinating. So, I just felt, if you like, it was a bit like a drug, really. The adrenaline rush, the tight deadlines, it was just great. And to work on secretive stuff, which that no one knows about, and then you read about in the newspapers, and you've been involved in it. I think that was actually really quite exciting. So why am I still here? I suppose the interesting thing for me about Rothschild & Co are a number of things. Firstly, it is just advisory. So we don't have product. We're not selling stuff. We're just selling our brains. So what you're actually providing a client is your experience, your judgment, your intellect. That's attractive. Of course, there are other banks that do that, but we're a small group of people that there are fewer banks that do that, then offer multi-product, as in you offer a loan package, you offer a clever derivative instrument. So I'm more attracted to pure advisory than other products, but that's just me. That's just my perspective. Also, I think we are probably the only international family bank that's left. So 200-year history. And what I like about the family ownership structure is that I'm not under fee pressure. I don't have to, every 12 months deliver a certain amount of P&L, because it's a family private business. We take a long-term view. And with that comes, I think, objective advice. You're putting your client's interests first. And that has to be front and center. And that is part of the Rothschild values. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying our competitor banks don't give good, objective, independent advice. Our industry is surrounded by smart people who are professional. But for me, the family culture of the organization, along with the international reach of what we offer and pure advisory is why I'm still here. And of course, over the years, of course, I'm human, right? There have been tempting proposals, of course there have, but I take the view, if you enjoy what you're doing, have huge amount of respect for your colleagues and love your clients, then why move?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So as someone who's successfully risen through the ranks of different levels within the firm to become the co-head of UK and global co-head of industrials, what do you think has helped you in rising up through the firm? And now at your level of seniority, what does a typical day look like for you?
Okay, let's do the easy one first. There is no typical day. I mean, that's one of the attractions of the job, because you can wake up one morning and you don't know what's ahead of you. Of course, you've got a diary full of things that you're going to attend, but often it gets derailed because suddenly there's an urgent call from a client who is in need of immediate advice, because time is sensitive in this profession. So there is no typical day, although there's a rhythm and a pattern on certain days. Now, what has helped? So a few things, I suppose. Firstly, it is a tough, intense environment. So I would say, don't be afraid of responsibility. In fact, try and get more and more responsibility. My motto has been, I want to take on more responsibility and make my line manager, but make my line manager's life easier so he or she can focus on other things. And with that, I benefit because I have more responsibility. Develop a trusted relationship with your client, irrespective of who at your client you're interacting with. There'll be different levels of hierarchy. When I was a junior, I wasn't talking to the chief executive. I was talking to the head of M&A. But don't forget that actually today's head of M&A will be tomorrow's chief executive. So develop that level of trust, that relationship, and that's going to be helpful in your network going forward. Stay relevant, stay competent. It will be a given that as an investment banker that you will be smart, you will be technically proficient. You know the ins and outs of the financials. You have an appreciation of what lawyers do. You have an appreciation of the markets. You have to stay relevant. So make sure you are absolutely current. And I made sure in those days, I know people don't read the FT in physical form anymore, but I used to buy the FT every morning. It was hard work initially, but then when you develop an interest and you start reading the lecture column, it's actually fascinating. You learn a lot. Don't be shy to give your opinion. In the early days, I remember one of my clients, he said, Ravi, look, just tell me what you think. I may not agree with it, but I want to hear what you think. We can agree, we can disagree, but just tell me what you think. Don't tell me what you think I want to hear. So don't be afraid of giving judgment, giving advice. You're never always going to be right. People are going to have different flavors, but that's what you're hired for. And really, just enjoy it. You cannot do this job continually unless you enjoy it. So those would be my 4 or 5 key things.
Sounds great.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ravi. I guess the next question would be from me. So as the global head of industrials, did you just fall into that sector, or did you always have a love for the industrials industry? And then to add to that question, how has the M&A industry changed over the course of your career?
I fell into industrials. I didn't join thinking I wanted to be an industrials banker. I joined just wanting to do transactions. Now, when I joined, I was put into this, I had no option where I was going to be placed at Rothschild. I was just put into a team. And the team I joined was called the General M&A Team, UK General M&A Team, that's what it was called. But it just so happened that the dialogue and the transactions that I worked on and the clients that I interfaced with happened to be in industrial companies, engineers, automotive companies, building materials, across the board. They were generally industrial companies. And I suppose what happens is that you develop an expertise in that area because there are similar parallels, similar dynamics of the end markets. And then your network is developed because even if clients move from company to company, they generally stay within their own sector. My team then eventually became, from the general team, became the industrial team, and it grew in size, etc. So yeah, I sort of fell into it really, but I developed a specialism, and I think there are different routes of how people have developed their career. Some people specialize on day one, some people specialize later. So I think it's all roads really are effective. Things have changed. In some senses, they haven't. I mean, what hasn't changed? What hasn't changed is, the technical competency of the job is the same. Corporate finance skill is corporate finance skill. Those skills are never going to change. The intensity, the tight deadlines, client service, what makes companies valuable, what should they be thinking about in terms of strategy, those things don't change. Of course, there are different patterns through economy, through cycles, but those fundamental things don't change. What has changed, though, are a few things. When I started the profession, financial sponsors, and we used to call them private equity houses in those days, they were a fraction of the market, 5%, maybe 10% at most. Financial sponsors are now half the market. So that's been a big shift. With that, there was actually the opportunity where it wasn't just M&A advice that we were giving, it was equity advice, debt advice, but still advice, not product. So that's been, if you like, a change in the product or the advice that we've been offering. More debt became more acceptable. We've all seen the experiences. I know the two of you are very young, but there are cycles of debt, and we can talk. Probably don't have enough time to talk about the pros and cons of all of that, but debt certainly became more palatable and more acceptable. Not surprising given how cheap debt is at the moment, and therefore companies can afford to take on more debt. I think the other dynamic that has changed is that when I started, there were fewer cross-border transactions. The world is now completely global. It's cross-border. In fact, it's unusual not for a transaction not to have a cross-border element and the globalization element. Transactions are probably slightly different, more structured, etc. But and then I suppose the other thing is two other things. It's not just shareholders that matter anymore. It's stakeholders. It's the world at large. We all have to be more responsible and more accountable for our actions, rightly so. And I think a lot of the developments have been positive developments, but there has been change.
Great, no, thank you for that. I guess the last question from me would be, having had an incredible career and advising on over 200 transactions, is there any one particular deal which stands out to you as being perhaps the most exciting or the most challenging, or one that stands out to you?
It's going to sound really cheesy, but whether it's a 100 million acquisition, a 200 million disposal, or a 10 billion hostile bid, each one, what is fascinating about this job, each deal has a different nuance, a different flavor. You actually learn something new in each transaction, and each one is different. So it is very, very bespoke in terms of how you navigate and the advice. So maybe if I were to pick one, I won't name, but some research you can probably guess. So I was fortunate to lead one of the largest hostile bids in the UK market over the last few years. It's 10 billion. Not only was it what we call a unilateral bid, which is the target not providing a recommendation to target, not providing information, but it had quite tricky political national security tech flavors and nuances that had to be navigated. I mean, that was a tough deal. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It stretched me a lot in many aspects. I learned a lot. It wasn't my first hostile bid. I love hostile bids because I think they're very complicated, and I like complicated stuff. But that one to date probably marginally stands out to some of the others. So.
Thank you very much.
And our final question, you've already given some great advice, but just to wrap up, what advice would you give to students interested in entering investment banking?
I think there are certain decisions that I would encourage students to think about before putting their application in. I think consider all options. I went through the ACA route. A lot of our senior bench at Rothschild are ex-accountants. I think that is it gives you good training and good exposure, all the elements that I mentioned earlier, which I won't repeat. So don't just think about entry at graduate level, think about lateral entry at ACA level. Think about what interests you. I'm interested in advice only because I like the intellectual rigor that provides. Others may prefer more, if you like, a broader spectrum of offering product in addition to advice. I think it's all about personal taste, but I do think that will affect, if you like, which institutions that you would apply to in terms of for your career. Be prepared for volatility and unpredictability in your working day. Do not assume that you are going to be in control of your working day. And I know that sounds terrible, but that's just, I do want to make this real. So if you are an individual that thrives on each day being different, thrives on each day could be tough or in different levels of intensity and volatile, then make sure you're prepared for that. Be prepared to challenge yourself. I think this is a challenging environment, and each day you will be challenged. And look, I think it's, if you enjoy intellectual rigor, if you enjoy tight deadlines, if you enjoy learning heavily on a daily basis, then I think this is a very rewarding career. And I think we're fortunate in life, we're surrounded by some fantastic investment banks who offer all of these skills, all of this training, etc. So there isn't a shortage of institutions that offer certainly what I think Rothschild Co offers.
Definitely, and that's some great advice. So thank you again, Ravi, so much for joining us. We've really appreciated this, and we're sure our viewers will learn a lot from your insights as well. For those of you who are watching, we hope you've enjoyed the season finale of M&A Mondays. We'll be back again next year with some more exciting videos, but for now, please do feel free to like the video and click subscribe. So thank you, and we'll see you next year.
Great, thank you both. Take care.
Thank you.